Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this today, we are going to be keeping up the story. There's a breaking news coming from the New York Times. The New York Times reports Trump's aides pushed for a military plan against Maduro. Here's what it means for the Caribbean and global politics. Now, the breaking story is that the New York Times exposes Trump's secret plan to depose Maduro by force. Now, a bombshell report from the New York Times reveals that the current president of the United States, President Donald Trump, aides are reportedly pushing for a plan to depose Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro by force. Today, we're diving deep into the political and regional implications of this shocking plan and what it tells us about the shifting global balance of power, especially in the Caribbean. Let's break it down. In a shocking report by the New York Times, details have emerged about current president, why am I saying former president? Current President Donald Trump aides push for a military intervention to remove Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro from power. What would such a plan mean for the region, for U.S. Caribbean relations, and for global multipolarism? Now, these are some of the questions, and we're going to head right now into the story that was carried by the New York Times, and it was dated September 29, 2025. That was yesterday. The push by top aides to President Trump to remove Nicolás Maduro as the leader of Venezuela has intensified in recent days, with administration officials discussing a broad campaign that would escalate military pressure to try to force him out, U.S. officials say. It is being led by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Mr. Rubio, rather, not Mr. Trump, Mr. Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, argues that Mr. Maduro is an illegitimate leader who oversees the export of drugs to the United States, which he says poses an imminent threat. So the fact is that Rubio, that's Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State under the Trump administration, is suggesting that Maduro is an illegitimate leader. That is something that is unprecedented in history. Now, the fact of the matter is, both administrations under the first Trump administration, that was from 2016 to 2020, and the Biden administration from 2020 to 2024, both of them replaced Maduro with the opposition. So we had Juan Guaido, who the first Trump administration had anointed as the leader of, or the president of Venezuela, even though Maduro was still in power. And then under Biden administration, after the election was held in Venezuela in 2023, I believe, if I'm correct. If I remember that the last Venezuelan election was 2023, am I correct? I think I might be correct. But the then president, President Biden, wanted and had also anointed González. And González is now residing in España, in Spain. In recent weeks, the U.S. military has launched lethal actions or attacks on civilian boats that the administration said were smuggling drugs for Venezuelan gangs. But Mr. Rubio is shaping a more aggressive strategy using intelligence provided by the CIA. Officials said the Pentagon has built up a force of more than 6,500 troops in the region. The intelligence agency's director, John Ratcliffe, and Stephen Miller, Mr. Trump's chief domestic policy advisor, both support Mr. Rubio's approach, the officials added. So there is now an inking up. They are, increasing, escalating their desire to depose Nicolás Maduro from office by force. By force. That is what we have to understand. Because administration officials assert Mr. Maduro sits atop Venezuela's cartel network, they can argue that removing him from power is ultimately a counter-narcotics operation. So what they're going to do, they're going to say that he is in fact linked to narco trafficking, which they have already asserted, which that theory they've already advanced. So that is going to be used as a pretext to getting him, to deposing him from office. Mr. Rubio repeatedly cites the Justice Department's 2020 indictment of him and other Venezuelan officials on drug trafficking charges. Now, this is something that is interesting for Caribbean and Latin American nations to understand. If the United States alleges that Dr. Andrew Holness or Kamla Person Cesar, or B. Cesar, as somebody suggested that I should pronounce her name as, is it B. Cesar, and also Mia Mottley of Barbados, or any of the prime ministers and presidents of the region, if the U.S. suggests, that's the Department of Defense or the Department of War, or the Justice Department in the United States suggests that they are linked to drug trafficking, the United States has the right and the wherewithal to depose them from office, even though the people might have voted these people into office. This is what you have to understand. So this is something not to be taken lightly. He recently described Mr. Maduro as a fugitive from American justice and the head of a terrorist organization and organized crime organization that have taken over a country. This is dangerous, all right? These are just no light accusations against the man, whether you think he's innocent or not. And this is not to suggest here that he's innocent. What we are suggesting on this channel is that due process should be followed, and the rule of law should be applied. Okay? Not just to rely on accusations without evidence and without the intervention of the courts. Very important that we understand the point I'm trying to raise here. At the same time, two senior figures in Venezuela's opposition say their movement has been planning for what to do if Maduro falls and have been talking with the Trump administration about that possibility. And I understand that Mr. Gonzalez in Spain is making his preparations should Mr. Maduro be deposed. And the New York Times said something rather very dangerous that, but before I go into that, let's look at what Mr. Rubio is saying and continues to say. Mr. Rubio met with 5 opposition figures in May who secretly fled to the United States in what he called a precise operation. He has praised the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, whom he called by her nickname, the Venezuelan Iron Lady, in a tribute this year. So they're working also with Venezuelans, and that's why they have upped their bounty to $50 million for the head of Nicolás Maduro, for him to be indicted in a U.S. court. So we have a replay of what took place in Panama, all right, in 1989. We don't know if eventually the United States will just invade Venezuela. Okay, we hope not, but it seems like that is what they're pushing for. Now, the State Department said the administration was focused on fighting drug cartels. This is why they say this is a pretext that is being laid for them going after Maduro, that they're actually fighting drug cartels. But are they fighting drug cartels, or are they trying to unseat a president that they considers somebody who is in their way and who is allowing them to run roughshod over the resources of Venezuela? Maduro is not the legitimate leader of Venezuela. This is what a spokesperson is saying in Washington. He's a fugitive of American justice who undermines regional security and poisons Americans, and we want to see him brought to justice, said Tommy Pigott, the State Department's deputy spokesman, when asked to comment for this article. The U.S. is engaged in a counter-drug cartel operation, and any claim that we are coordinating with anyone on anything other than this targeted effort is completely false, he added. So they're suggesting that Nicolás Maduro is poisoning Americans, and he is a threat to the security of both the region and to the United States itself. Something that this is rather some heavy stuff that we have to look at and we have to examine. During his first administration, Mr. Trump supported a different opposition leaders' attempted uprising against Mr. Maduro and imposed punishing sanctions on Venezuela. But the current efforts appear far more expansive, mainly because of the U.S. military strikes and buildup. And all of this is being done in plain sight, and nobody can do anything about it, it seems. Okay? Now, only a small number of officials are involved in White House planning conversations in Venezuela. Some people briefed on the discussions suggested that Mr. Rubio and his allies were first looking for ways to oust Mr. Maduro without having to resort to direct U.S. military action. Okay? Now, that is what they're saying, that he's a fugitive. So they're upping the game now that he is a fugitive. Okay. Now, the New York Times is explaining here and exposing Mr. Trump's agenda. Mr. Trump has not explicitly stated that his goal is to depose Mr. Maduro, but he has boasted about the new military campaign in the Caribbean. Okay. But if they're escalating, we know that that is their real agenda. So I'm not sure what the New York Times is suggesting here. Okay. Now, look at what the United States authorities are suggesting here. And I quote, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy Venezuelan terrorists and trafficking networks led by Nicolás Maduro, he said last week in a speech at the UN General Assembly. We will blow you out of existence, he added. I think this was Trump speaking. Mr. Rubio has said Mr. Trump is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations, despite the lack of congressional authorization for any armed conflict with them. So they don't have to get any congressional authorization. The president has the right to go and depose a legitimate president based on the understanding of the global South, and perhaps, I'm sure, the Venezuelan people. Law experts say the lethal military strikes on the suspected drug smuggling boats have been illegal. Okay? Now, they're telling him that he needs to stop sending drugs to America, and that is the reason why they have to get him out, because if they don't, then he is going to cause the deaths of many Americans, so they have to protect Americans and the citizens that live or who live in the Latin American and Caribbean region. Okay? Now, some of the authorities in Washington, opposing Trump's aggressive manner of deposing, of sacking the president of Venezuela from office. Some senior U.S. officials, most notably Richard Grenell, Mr. Trump's envoy to Venezuela, and the head of the Kennedy Center, say any attempt to remove Mr. Maduro by force would be misguided. Those officials argue that expanding the campaign against Venezuela into a regime change operation risks putting the United States in an extended war of the kind Mr. Trump promised to avoid. Okay? And this is what we have to understand, that we don't need another war, because this is not going to be a very just easy war to fight. There is going to be a lot of collateral damage if this is going to be an invasion, as they are here intimating, postulating here. Now, speaking at the Conservative Political Action Committee event this month in Paraguay, Mr. Grenell said there was still time for diplomacy. I believe in diplomacy, Mr. Grenell said, and so do I. Now, what do you think, listening viewers? Do you think the Trump administration should just go there and depose Nicolás Maduro, the legitimate president of the United States, or should they exhaust the channels of diplomacy? That's the question. That's the question that we should be asking. That is the question that we should be asking. My understanding, based on what the New York Times also has reported, is that there was a letter sent by Mr. Maduro to Trump on September, I think it was September 17th, thereabout, or before, in which he said that he was willing, the president of Venezuela, Mr. Maduro, was willing to sit down with Mr. Trump to deal with the matter, all right, and to see how best they could resolve this. But Washington has not taken his letter seriously. They do not wish to be engaged in any diplomacy, all right? This is just about military force, and this is what they are about. Now, listen to what the United Nations is saying. The United Nations say most coca, the base product in cocaine, comes from Colombia and, to a smaller degree, Peru and Bolivia. While some cocaine leaves South America through Venezuela, the country is not a main source of US-bound drugs, according to a 2020 report from the DEA. So we are reliving this sort of experience of what took place in Iraq, when the CIA and the United Nations had told the then Bush administration that there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But nonetheless, the United States says, I don't care. We have an agenda, and we are going to take the then president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, out of office, which they did successfully so. Will the same history, or will that same history, be replayed on the shores of Venezuela in the hemisphere of the Americas? That's the question for you. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform, and those who are desirous, willing to make financial donations, you can send them, or those donations or that donation, to my Cash App, and the address is $ MZ or Z, wherever you are, whether you pronounce it Z or Z, MZ or Z, TUCK, TUCK 9. That is where you can direct all financial contributions if you'd like to contribute to independent journalism. Thank you so much for your attention to this matter, and I hope that you would like the videos, you'll share them with as many people, and you will pray for the country of Venezuela and its people. Thank you so much. All the best. Ciao. Adios.